Justin FREAKIN, the formidable voice of culture.
Hey Justin, are you trolling?
This is the Troll Patrol, live with Justin FREAKIN.
Welcome to the Troll Patrol Live, where we are on about an hour early because we will be covering the return of Dark Brandon, apparently. I almost called him Brandon. Joe Biden set to give a speech on protecting democracy. Still on the road. Was in New York. Tones, good evening, my friend. Please be safe out there. If you are riding in the Tesla with the autopilot going, it worries me when you're doing that. Oh, Tone's going to be home before we get to the New Hampshire debate here in a few minutes. At 8 o'clock, we will be covering the New Hampshire Senate debate between Democratic incumbent Senator Maggie Hassan. I have to apologize. I've been calling her Maggie Hassan. I've been saying her name wrong. This is New Hampshire, and this is a white woman. It's Maggie Hassan. Not Hassan. Maggie Hassan. Me pronounce a name wrong? No way. Democratic incumbent Senator Maggie Hassan debating the Republican nominee Doug Bolduc, who is a hardcore Trumper, batshit crazy Republican. So this should be fun, but also it's New Hampshire. New Hampshire is kind of weird up there in New England. It's kind of like a solid blue area. However, New Hampshire likes to buck the system, has a real libertarian bent to it. So this Senate debate should be really fun. This should be really fun. But before we get to that, the top of the hour, we're going to be covering the speech of President Joe Biden. Let me go ahead. Did I hit the commercials on? Yeah, I hit the commercials on Twitch. So hopefully you'll get the whole Biden speech without interruption. Then we have a short news rundown for later. We're going to be talking about some news shit. One of the things I want to talk about is, heck, it would have been last year probably. Maybe it was earlier this year. The Disinformation Governance Board, and I kind of laughed at the right-wing assessment of it. Now we have actual reporting coming out about DHS's use of social media. Surprise, surprise, it's not actually the Biden administration doing it. This shit's been going on for years. We're going to refer to the Intercept, fantastic reporting by Ken Klippenstein for the Intercept. We're going to read that piece here in a little while. Former Intercept reporter I'm not high enough for this shit. Former Intercept reporter, founder of the Intercept, no longer there, went on with Tucker Carlson last night to talk about the Paul Pelosi attacker, which apparently was videoed. We found out today that there was security footage, but the security cameras weren't being monitored. Oh, it's a Sonata. I thought you had a Tesla for some reason. I'm sorry. So if you're just cruising on an interstate, I would trust it. That's different. That's different than, you know, city driving, which we have seen many accidents. Phoebe, good evening. Were you not here for the unveiling of the new look, same great troll taste last night? Trying to give the people what they want, responding to criticisms. So one of the biggest criticisms I faced was that my graphics were too much. They were too busy, too much going on screen. So we've tried to take that into consideration and change it. Still working out a few of the kinks. I'm afraid that like my logo down there at the bottom might be covering closed captioning. I'm thinking the chat and my camera are going to switch sides, because as we were doing this last night, I kept noticing that when we're watching videos from like CNBC or Fox, they tend to put the talking person on the right and the video that they're talking about on the left. So last night the talking head kept having the chat over them. So I may switch things, and if you notice that the chat is on the other side, my camera is on right side, left side. I don't know how you guys are facing. Stage right. No, stage left. Fucking it up over here. Sorry. But it yells at you if you don't keep your hands on the wheel. Well, it should. Oh, let me give you your meme of the day before we get over here to Dark Brandon. This is our last Halloween meme. I just stumbled on this one. It really made me laugh, so I wanted to show it to you. We are waiting. I've got it up on NBC News right now. Biden delivers address on protecting democracy. My God, I hope he's out in front of something that has red lights and blue lights all over the fucking place. I want to see the right-wing heads explode again. Phoebe, it's okay. So I was when I first started doing like work from home, video editing. I had 16 gigs of RAM. That really wasn't enough to do what I needed it to do, and I couldn't have possibly streamed this with 16 gigs of RAM. Then I bumped up to 32 gigs of RAM. I don't think 32 gigs of RAM might be able to handle something simple. But like with the graphics I'm sporting and shit, like it takes the 64 gigs of RAM that I've got going on right here. Now this layout is using a lot less CPU power than the old one. What up, Sky Comet? We are currently awaiting remarks from Dark Brandon. Biden delivers address on protecting democracy. It's supposed to take place any minute now. Any minute now. We'll flip over whenever we see DC News. Here we go. We're going to go take Biden here.
The third highest ranking official in America. He carried in his backpack zip ties, duct tape, rope, and a hammer. As he told the police, he had come looking for Nancy Pelosi, to take her hostage, to interrogate her, to threaten to break her kneecaps. But she wasn't there. Her husband, my friend Paul Pelosi, was home alone. The assailant tried to take Paul hostage. He woke him up. He wanted to tie him up. The assailant ended up using a hammer to smash Paul's skull. Thankfully, by the grace of God, Paul survived. All this happened after the assault. And it just, it's hard to even say. It's hard to even say. After the assailant entered the home asking, "Come on, man, where's Nancy? Where's Nancy?" Those are the very same words used by the mob when they stormed the United States Capitol on January the 6th, when they broke windows, kicked in the doors, brutally attacked law enforcement, roamed the corridors, hunting for officials, and erected gallows to hang the former Vice President, Mike Pence. It was an enraged mob that had been whipped up into a frenzy by a president repeating over and over again the big lie that the election of 2020 had been stolen. It's a lie that fueled the dangerous rise in political violence and voter intimidation over the past 2 years. Even before January the 6th, we saw election officials and election workers in a number of states subject to menacing calls, physical threats, even threats to their very lives. In Georgia, for example, the Republican Secretary of State and his family were subjected to death threats because he refused to break the law and give in to the defeated president's demand, just find him 11,780 votes. Just find me 11,780 votes. Election workers like Shay Moss and her mother Ruby Freeman were harassed and threatened just because they had the courage to do their job and stand up for the truth, to stand up for our democracy. This institution, this intimidation, this violence against Democrats, Republicans, and nonpartisan officials just doing their jobs are the consequence of lies told for power and profit, lies of conspiracy and malice, lies repeated over and over to generate a cycle of anger, hate, vitriol, and even violence. In this moment, we have to confront those lies with the truth. The very future of our nation depends on it. My fellow Americans, we're facing a defining moment, an inflection point. We must, with one overwhelming, unified voice speak as a country and say there's no place for voter intimidation or political violence in America, whether it's directed at Democrats or Republicans.
He didn't mention the candidate in Pennsylvania.
No place ever. I speak today near Capitol Hill, near the U.S. Capitol, the citadel of our democracy. I know there's a lot at stake in these midterm elections, from our economy to the safety of our streets, to our personal freedoms, to the future of health care, Social Security, Medicare. It's all important. But we'll have our differences. We'll have our difference of opinion. And that's what it's supposed to be. But there's something else at stake. Democracy itself. I'm not the only one who sees it. Recent polls have shown that an overwhelming majority of Americans believe our democracy is at risk, that our democracy is under threat. They too see that democracy is on the ballot this year, and they're deeply concerned about it. So today, I appeal to all Americans, regardless of party, to meet this moment of national and generational importance. We must vote, knowing what's at stake, and not just the policy of the moment, but institutions that have held us together as we've sought a more perfect union are also at stake. We must vote knowing who we have been, what we're at risk of becoming. Look, my fellow Americans, the old expression, freedom is not free,
Cost a
requires constant
$1.73.
vigilance. From the very beginning, nothing has been guaranteed about democracy in America. Every generation has had to defend it, protect it, preserve it, choose it. For that's what democracy is. It's a choice, a decision of the people, by the people, and for the people. The issue couldn't be clearer.
How did we get here? This is not my beautiful
house.
house.
Must decide whether we'll have fair and free
This is not
elections.
my beautiful wife.
And every vote counts. We, the people, must decide whether we're going to sustain a republic where reality is accepted, the law is obeyed, and your vote is truly sacred. We, the people, must decide whether the rule of law will prevail, whether we will allow the dark forces to thirst for power, put ahead of the principles that we've
We know
long
about those
guided
dark
us.
forces thirsting for power.
You know, American democracy is under attack because the defeated former president of the United States refuses to accept the results of the 2020 election. He refuses to accept the will of the people. He refuses to accept the fact that he lost. He has abused his power and put the loyalty to himself before loyalty to the Constitution. And he's made a big lie an article of faith in the MAGA Republican Party, the minority of that party. The great irony
No, they are
about the
not.
2020 election is that it's the most attacked election in our history. And yet, there's no election in our history that we can be more certain of its results. Every legal challenge that could have been brought was brought. Every recount that could have been undertaken was undertaken. Every recount confirmed the results. Wherever fact or evidence had been demanded, the big lie has been proven to be just that, a big lie, every single time. Yet now, extreme MAGA Republicans aim to question not only the legitimacy of past elections, but elections being held now and into the future. The extreme MAGA element of the Republican Party, which is a minority of that party, as I said earlier, but is its driving force, is trying to succeed where they failed in 2020, to suppress the right of voters and subvert the electoral system itself. That means denying your right to vote and deciding whether your vote even counts. Instead of waiting until an election is over, they're starting well before it. They're starting now. They've emboldened violence and intimidation of voters and election officials. It's estimated that there are more than 300 election deniers on the ballot all across America this year.
I'd say the number's higher than that.
We can't ignore the impact this is having on our country. It's damaging, it's corrosive, and it's destructive. And I want to be very clear. This is not about me. It's about all of us. It's about what makes America, America. It's about the durability of our democracy. For democracies are more than a form of government.
Yeah, I think it's bad politics for them not to paint the entire Republican Party with the brush of Trump.
A way that defines who we are, what we believe, why we do what we do. Democracy is simply that fundamental. We must, in this moment, dig deep within ourselves and recognize that we can't take democracy for granted any longer. With democracy on the ballot, we have to remember these first principles. Democracy means the rule of the people, not the rule of monarchs or the moneyed, but the rule of the people. Autocracy is the opposite.
I agree. That's why we should try democracy in this country.
It means the rule of one person, one interest, one ideology, one party. To state the obvious, the lives of billions of people from antiquity till now have been shaped by the battle between these competing forces, between the aspirations of the many and the greed and power of the few, between the people's right for self-determination and the self-seeking autocrat, between the dreams of a democracy and the appetites of an autocracy. What we're doing now is going to determine whether democracy will long endure. It, in my view, is the biggest of questions. Whether the American system that prizes the individual, bends towards justice, and depends on the rule of law, whether that system will prevail. This is the struggle we're now in. A struggle for democracy.
They're going to read no matter what he says.
A struggle for decency and dignity. A struggle for prosperity and progress. A struggle for the very soul of America itself. Make no mistake, democracy is on the ballot for all of us. We must remember that democracy is a covenant. We need to start looking out for each other again, seeing ourselves as we the people, not as entrenched enemies. This is a choice we can make. Disunion and chaos are not inevitable. There's been anger before in America. There's been division before in America. But we've never given up on the American experiment. And we can't do that now. The remarkable thing about American democracy is this. Just enough of us, on just enough occasions, have chosen not to dismantle democracy, but to preserve democracy. We must choose that path again. Because democracy is on the ballot, we have to remember that even in our darkest moments, there are fundamental values and beliefs that unite us as Americans.
Mom, can we have democracy?
And they must unite us now.
We have democracy at home.
Well, I think first,
democracy at home.
We believe the vote in America is sacred, to be honored, not denied, respected, not dismissed, counted, not ignored. A vote is not a partisan tool to be counted when it helps your candidates and tossed aside when it doesn't. Second, we must, with an overwhelming voice, stand against political violence and voter intimidation, period. Stand up and speak against it. We don't settle our differences in America with a riot, a mob, or a bullet, or a hammer.
Have you read an American history
book?
We
settle peaceably at the ballot box. We have to be honest with ourselves, though. We have to face this problem.
You're not being honest.
We can't turn away from it. We can't pretend it's just going to solve itself. There's an alarming rise in the number of our people in this country condoning political violence or simply remaining silent because silence is complicity. The disturbing rise of voter intimidation, the pernicious tendency to excuse political violence, or at least trying to explain it away. We can't allow this sentiment to grow. We must confront it head on now. It has to stop now. I believe the voices excusing or calling for violence and intimidation are a distinct minority in America. But they're loud and they are determined.
Good evening.
We have to be more determined. All of us who reject political violence and voter intimidation, and I believe that's the overwhelming majority of the American people, all of us must unite to make it absolutely clear that violence and intimidation have no place in America. And third, we believe in democracy. That's who we are as Americans. I know it isn't easy. Democracy isn't perfect. It always has been. But we're all called to defend it now. Now. History and common sense tell us that liberty,
Yeah,
opportunity,
the rich
and justice
are a minority
thrive
as
in
well.
a democracy, not in an autocracy. At our best, America is not a zero-sum society where for you to succeed, someone else has to fail. The promise of America is big enough. It's big enough for everyone to succeed. Every generation.
No. That is the opposite of how capitalism
wider.
works, actually.
Every generation, including those who've been excluded before. We believe we should leave no one behind because each one of us is a child of God. And every person is sacred. If that's true, then every person's rights must be sacred as well. Individual dignity, individual worth, individual determination. That's America. That's democracy. And that's what we have to defend. Look, even as I speak here tonight, 27 million people have already cast their ballot in the midterm elections. Millions more will cast their ballots in the final days leading up to November the 8th, excuse me. And for
Throw
the
that
first
religion
time,
in.
this is the first time since the national election of 2020. Once again, we're seeing record turnout all over the country. And that's good. We want Americans to vote. We want every American's voice to be heard. Now we have to move the process forward. We know that more and more ballots are cast in early voting or by mail in America. And we know that many states don't start counting those ballots until after the polls close on November 8th. That means in some cases we won't know the winner of the election for a few days, until a few days after the election. It takes time to count all legitimate ballots in a legal and orderly manner. It's always been important for citizens in democracy to be informed and engaged. Now it's important for citizens to be patient as well. That's how it's supposed to work. This is also the first election since the events of January 6th, when the armed, angry mob stormed the U.S. Capitol. I wish I could say the assault on our democracy had ended that day, but I cannot. As I stand here today, there are candidates running for every level of office in America, for governor, Congress, Attorney General, Secretary of State, who won't commit. They will not commit to accepting the results of elections that they're running in. This is a path to chaos in America. It's unprecedented. It's unlawful. And it's un-American. As I've said before, you can't love your country only when you win. This is no ordinary year. So I ask you to think long and hard about the moment we're in. In a typical year, we're often not faced with questions of whether the vote we cast will preserve democracy or put us at risk. But this year we are. This year, I hope you'll make
Buddy,
the
that
future
has
of our
been every
democracy an
election
important part
in
of
my
your decision to
lifetime.
vote and how you vote. I hope you'll ask a simple question of each candidate you might vote for.
At least in my adult life.
Will that person accept the legitimate will of the American people, of the people voting in his district or her district? Will that person accept the outcome of the election, win or lose? The answer to that question is vital. And in my opinion, it should be decisive. On the answer to that question hangs the future of the country we love so much and the fate of the democracy that has made so much possible for us. Too many people have sacrificed too much for too many years for us to walk away from the American project and democracy. Because we've enjoyed our freedoms for so long, it's easy to think they'll always be with us no matter what. But that isn't true today. In our bones, we know democracy is
women have only been able to vote for like 100 plus
years,
years,
in our
100
power,
and some change.
Each and every one of us to preserve our democracy. And I
had these freedoms for so long.
I think I know
Civil Rights Act passed in the 60s.
I know we will. You have the power. It's your choice. It's your decision. The fate of the nation, the fate of the soul of America lies where it always does, with the people. In your hands, in your heart.
Buddy, everybody in this country wasn't even free when you were a kid.
My fellow Americans, we'll meet this moment. We just need to remember who we are.
Come on, man.
We are the United States of America. There's nothing beyond our capacity if we do it together. May God bless you all. May God protect our troops. May God bless those standing guard over our democracy. Thank you, and Godspeed.
That's my problem with this speech, is it wasn't Dark Brandon enough for me. I was wanting the return of Dark Brandon, but no. We got Biden's moderate dog and pony show again. Is this in the? I guess it's in the White House. Well, there you have it. We will be taking the New Hampshire Senate debate here in a few minutes, but I guess we're going to do some. We're going to do some news before we do that. I was expecting Brandon to go a little bit longer than that. I didn't think I was going to have to fill this much until we get to the New Hampshire Senate debate at the top of the hour between Democratic incumbent Maggie Hassan and the Republican nominee Doug Bullock. I like saying both their names, Maggie Hassan, Doug Bullock. Well, let me bullshit for a little bit here. This was your meme of the day. Is there anybody that snuck in here that I didn't say hey to? Hey to all the lurkers that are in here. Mox, good evening. I don't know if I hit you up. Mox dropping the poll for the Fetterman Oz race. I can't imagine that Puppy Killer Oz is going to win, but, you know, anything can happen. Polls show Fetterman up 3 to 4 points in most of the polls. Here is the thumbnail from last night's piece I did about Oz being a puppy killer. It's similar to a different thumbnail I did. This time I added a puppy. The puppy's asleep. No puppies were hurt in the making of this thumbnail. Clinically, I don't know. Oh no. That kind of scares me. I don't want to play that. That thumbnail is freaking me out. 538 has flipped today, unfortunately, and has given the Senate by 2 seats to the Republicans. Now, I don't. Their races they're calling are saying that Herschel Walker is going to win in Georgia. I believe they predicted that. I'm gonna have to look it up now. I'm gonna have to remember exactly what their predictions were. Now these were in their models, right? So they're running models like 100 different times, and then saying how many times out of 100 blah 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 will happen. So they're saying 54 times in 100 it goes towards Republicans, 46 times in 100 it goes towards the Democrats. Here are the seats. They're giving it to Walker in Georgia, 56 out of 100 times. They're predicting Fetterman in Pennsylvania, 54 out of 100 times. They're predicting Laxalt winning in Nevada, 59 out of 100 times. So they're giving it to Kelly, Hassan. They're saying Barnes is going to lose pretty bad. 80 out of 100 times that race goes to Ron Johnson. They're giving it to J.D. Vance in Ohio. Ohio is one of those that I think could surprise some people. And we've got a clip from Tim Ryan that made Fox News viewers cheer for him. I do not think that Pennsylvania goes for Oz, and even 538 is saying it's going for Fetterman. So those are the seats that they are predicting. It'll be Nevada a flip in Republicans' favor, and Georgia a flip in Republican favor. That still doesn't make sense because Pennsylvania would be a pickup. So that would only give the Republicans one seat. No, it says it's giving it to Fetterman here. Yeah, it's currently R. PA is a flip. That's what, that would give Republicans one seat according to if we went by 538's predictions. But 538 said they're giving it to Republicans by 2 seats. I think, unless I just misread this shit. Because I think the front page said their prediction is Republicans 2 seats in the Senate. Pick up 2 seats. But if Fetterman wins, as their models predicted, that would be 1 seat in the Senate, with the other 2 flipping. I don't want to make any predictions about New Hampshire until after we watch the debate here in about a half hour. We're going to watch Maggie Hassan, the Democratic incumbent, debate. No, they gave that to Kelly. The 2 seats they had flipping were Adam Laxalt and, God, my stoner ass. Go back and look at it again. The 2 seats were Georgia and Nevada that they had flipping. Laxalt defeating Cortez Masto in Nevada, and Walker defeating Warnock in Georgia. I think I might have saw that on Twitter or something, that 538 had flipped to 2, and then I went and looked this up. So maybe they've changed. That would only give the Republicans a 1-seat advantage in the Senate. That, according to 538's forecast, which I don't trust 538. Since Biden wanted to bring up violence, I guess we'll go ahead. We'll go to the news section and we'll highlight some stories that we'll go out of order here. I got 30 minutes to fill. So apparently there was indeed security footage of the Pelosi attack. The security cameras apparently weren't being monitored at the time. Here is a local news hit with the story.
Seriously injured House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's husband, Paul.
Yeah, sources tell ABC News Capitol Police had cameras outside the Pelosi's home last week, but no one was watching them at the time of the assault. ABC's Justin Finch reports from Washington.
New revelations days after attempted murder suspect David DePape allegedly smashed his way into House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's San Francisco home, searching for her, but instead finding her husband Paul and allegedly bashing him.
Now, technically, he wasn't trying to murder somebody. Apparently, like, he bashed Paul in the head with a fucking hammer. But apparently, his thought process was that he was going to break Nancy Pelosi's kneecaps, so she would have to be wheeled out onto the floor of Congress, and other Democrats would see what would happen to them if they lied. That was his plan.
Him in the head with a hammer. Sources familiar with the matter telling ABC News U.S. Capitol Police had working cameras outside the Pelosi's home, but nobody was watching them at the time of the attack. Those sources adding Capitol Police later noticed local police lights on a camera, rewound the video, and spotted the break-in. The speaker was in D.C. during the assault, and apparently the cameras are not monitored 24/7 when she's out of town. ABC News also learned the speaker's home private security system, designed to notify local and Capitol Police when triggered, never sent an alert to Capitol Police. On Tuesday, 42-year-old David DePape made his first court appearance, arraigned on state charges, including attempted murder and assault with a deadly weapon. DePape's public defender entering a not guilty plea and promising a vigorous defense.
Now, I listened to DePape's attorney. We might hear a statement from him here in a second, but, like, he's going to blame it on right-wing propaganda that they drove him fucking to do this, and he has a point, but also the dude's got to face the consequences for his actions.
We're going to be looking into Mr. DePape, his mental state.
San Francisco prosecutors claim DePape told first responders he was on a suicide mission with plans to target Speaker Pelosi and other lawmakers.
This was not a random residential burglary. This is something that was specifically targeted.
Amid concerns about political violence ahead of the midterm elections, the U.S. Capitol Police chief saying, "We believe today's political climate calls for more resources to provide additional layers of physical security for members of Congress." DePape is back in court for a bail hearing Friday. Prosecutors are arguing against his release, calling DePape a threat to the community. Justin Finch, ABC News, Washington.
This also comes as a candidate in Pennsylvania was attacked. As I said, Biden didn't mention this. This happened earlier today or last night. Apparently we got some shit-ass audio from whatever the news station is that's covering this. So you could see his hand after the attack. I'll go ahead and read the story. A Pennsylvania man running for office says he was attacked outside his Fayette County home earlier this week. Richard Ringer is on the ballot for Pennsylvania's 51st district as the House Democratic candidate. He says earlier this week, a man hit him in the head and face at least 10 times, knocking him out. Ringer was left with bruises on his face and cuts on his hand, and the assault is just the latest incident he's had to deal with in the last 3 weeks. He said he's had a message spray painted on his garage door and a brick thrown through a back window. So it would have been nice to actually get his comment.
It surprises me.
Oh, here we go.
I'm surprised this happened, but really not totally unexpected that something would happen. You know, getting close to the election day.
Another one I want to point out is that voters in Texas are saying that they are seeing intimidation due to their support of Beto O'Rourke. Beto O'Rourke. I am really having trouble talking tonight.
It's an isolated incident on one hand, but on the other hand, it's hate.
Pure hate
in venom.
We sat down with Andrew and Olivia at Lakeway City Park. We're not using their real names or showing their faces or home because of their concerns over retaliation. But they wanted to show us this letter sent through the mail and addressed to them personally.
But once I found out that it only came to us, it was disturbing.
The page-long tirade begins by saying, "Thank you for showing your support for Beto O'Rourke," which they believe is a reference to the campaign signs on their lawn.
I should feel safe having that sign in my yard.
The letter goes on to dub them enemies of the state of Texas and socialists. Then it takes an even darker turn, saying, "We also now know that you don't believe in the Second Amendment and don't have a gun to protect yourself and your family, so you will not be able to protect yourselves. Don't worry, there are lots of your neighbors that do believe in the Second Amendment and will decide if they want to help you or not if there is an issue." Does that feel threatening?
Yes.
Yes.
100%. People said it wasn't a direct threat. The indirect threat, the underlying point of that is what that's there. There's a threat in
It's
that
the
letter.
implication.
It goes on to say, "I am sure the Lakeway Police Department will be happy to help someone who supports cutting their budget and who supports a candidate that wants to abolish the police and have criminals roam the streets." The author then claims, "We have given your name and address to a list of organizations that are shipping illegal immigrants to people's houses. Your house will be used as a safe house where illegals will be dropped off for you to house. Some might be drug mules or sex offenders."
I feel that they're trying to scare us away and to leave.
At the bottom, it's simply signed,
You can't tell me that the person who wrote that letter doesn't watch Ben Shapiro, doesn't watch Steven Crowder, doesn't watch Tucker Carlson every night on Fox News. I mean, that's exactly where that's coming from. Lenny, good evening, my friend. We are on early tonight. We're about 20 minutes away from the New Hampshire Senate debate. We watched the Brandon speech earlier. Not dark Brandon enough for me. It was just Brandon-y. Not dark Brandon.
Your Lakeway neighbors. But Andrew and Olivia don't believe it's from anyone they know personally.
We talk to our neighbors who have different political beliefs, and we hang out all the time. It's never an issue. But for this person, it became an issue.
The question of whether or not this is an example of voter intimidation is an interesting one.
Constitutional law professor Eddie Carter says while this action may not legally qualify as intimidation because it happened away from a polling place,
certainly the spirit of the letter and the character of the letter, the wording, the phraseology, and the sentences and the intent behind the letter is aimed at intimidation. It infringes upon the very intent behind.
Thank you for being a freaking follower.
This couple has lived here in Lakeway for the last 20 years, and they say they have had things happen to them in years past, like campaign signs being ripped off their front lawn, but never anything quite like this. This feels different.
This feels a lot different. It's escalated.
Andrew and Olivia believe last week's attack on House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's husband goes to show that hateful words can lead to a dangerous place.
I'm not going to say fear because I don't want fear to take over, but I'm alert.
They say they've installed security cameras at their home, but the idea of taking their signs down never crossed their mind.
Not once.
If something like this happened to a supporter of Governor Abbott, would you feel the same way about it?
Absolutely. 100%. This is not a political party issue by any means. This is an issue of people feeling that it's okay to spew such negative.
No, I do believe it's a political party issue because one party isn't getting up there and just demonizing the other party all the time. Like, let me tell you the amount of people who have called me groomer and pedophile on my own videos on YouTube. Simply because I point out that the drag queen that they accused of being naked is wearing skin-colored tights and their ass isn't hanging out. These people are fucking crazy. Even Rush fucking Limbaugh called it.
As a conservative, it's getting harder and harder to not look like a kook.
We'll see how we're feeling at the end of the show after the debate. We might watch the Rush Limbaugh's wife We'll have to guess which wife it is. I assume it was his last one, but it could have been, one of the other two. But then again, I think they died of cancer when Rush divorced him. But I might be thinking of Newt Gingrich. I get all these fucking womanizing white sacks of shit confused. Pretty sure both of them cheated on their wives when they had cancer. Or I might be confusing it because they both look like sad sacks of mayonnaise. Rushbo was married 3 times, I think. Prager the same thing. Prager the same thing. I don't know if Prager's wife had cancer when he cheated on her. And it's the Family Values Party. Indeed. Indeed. But we might watch the Rush Limbaugh thing after the debate, because it's long. I don't know. It was Rush Limbaugh's wife on with Glenn Beck. Glenn Beck, I guess, wants to be the heir apparent to Rush Limbaugh. But also, so does Dan Bongino. So does Sean Hannity. Tones, glad you made it home safe. But speaking of right-wing talking heads that are hard to stomach, I guess I'll have to give you guys a content warning on this one. We're getting ready to see Tucker Carlson's face. He had Glenn Greenwald on. Why are there so many glaring doubts and holes in the Pelosi attack story? That is the chyron on Tucker Carlson. By the way, there aren't any glaring holes. The attacker has given his statement to the Department of Justice, and we have seen it. We've seen it. I also believe it's kind of like the QAnon shaman, Jacob Chamley, or whatever his fucking name is. Got really upset after he was, a true patriot for the cause, and then gets put in the clink, and they're all calling him Antifa. And he's like, I'm not Antifa. I did this for Trump. It's the same thing. Imagine this dude being so sold on the misinformation that he believes that he goes and attacks Nancy Pelosi's husband and then gets called a gay hippie communist by the right. It's hilarious.
So everybody feels, obviously, pain thinking of an 82-year-old man being hit with a hammer. It's like the worst thing imaginable. Well, it's quite common now. But why should the rest of us sit here and accept obvious inconsistencies in a story that has public policy implications and not say anything?
What? Huh?
We obviously shouldn't, and I think this is the most important point about all of this, which is how many millions of people have been conditioned to believe that it's immoral or even some kind of reflection of mental illness, like you're a conspiracy theorist, if you don't immediately and unquestionably accept whatever story is told to you by institutions of authority. And the amazing...
Glenn, I read the transcript of the attacker's words. That's not just automatically believing some story from an institution. I read what the attacker told the Department of Justice. What the fuck is wrong with you?
The thing about that, Tucker, is that this framework is being constructed by journalists, people whose primary purpose in life is supposed to be to question and challenge the claims of the powerful, and instead they're demonizing anybody who does so. Skepticism itself can never be wrong. Skepticism says there's evidentiary holes and there's faulty reasoning in what we're being told. Even if evidence does emerge later on to prove it, the skepticism itself was not just valid but necessary.
So Jeffrey Epstein killed himself. The Russians blew up their own pipeline. Julian Assange
good
is
evening.
a criminal. I mean, maybe we're in the habit of just accepting the most ludicrous possible claims and moving on to the next thing. It feels like where we are.
And he had to tie it back into the Russian thing.
I mean, I remember, Victoria Nuland, who's the State Department official in charge of Ukraine, went before Congress and said, we're really worried that the U.S. and Ukraine have biological labs that are very dangerous, and if they fall into the Russian hands, it can be a disaster. And anyone who said, wait, what does she mean, was instantly branded a conspiracy theorist. How many people were called conspiracy theorists because they question whether the vaccine works the way they were told to work or anything else? This is what they do, is demonize questioning.
And when I asked them where they got that the vaccine was 100% effective, do you know what I get? Every goddamn time from them. An episode of Rachel Maddow. Where in the same episode, I had to read the whole fucking transcript of the show to prove this guy wrong. Where in the same fucking episode, she even said they weren't 100% effective or used language. Just because, like, once she said it stops the virus in its tracks or whatever. That is always what I get from these people. Well, they were told the vaccine doesn't work, blah, blah, blah. What the fuck? Dude. I'm just, like, aghast at what is going on in our media. And I used to have the utmost respect for Glenn Greenwald. He used to be one of my favorite fucking journalists. What in the fuck happened to you, dude?
Dude, I think you were on that night. What, biolabs in Ukraine? Shut up, Putin apologist! What? Glenn Greenwald. Always do like a palate cleanser, the fresh air of sanity coming into the studio. Thank you very much.
I'm speechless. I'm speechless. I hadn't watched that clip. I knew I was in for something. I knew I was in for a ride with that one, but I wasn't expecting all that. How much fucking bullshit can you... That was a 2.5 minute segment. How much bullshit can you fit into 2.5 minutes? My God. Okay, so we're about 13 minutes away from the New Hampshire Senate debate. We're going to be watching Democratic incumbent Maggie Hassan. I can't say her name right. I can't say it right. Maggie Hassan? Maggie Hassan? We're going to be watching Democratic incumbent Maggie Hassan debate Republican nominee Doug Bolduc. New Hampshire is a weird state in a very blue area where they have a very libertarian bent. Cicero, good evening. And you never heard of Glenn Greenwald? He's the founder of The Intercept. Oh, yeah! Revigal. I am so sorry, Revigal. I don't know exactly how to say your name, but if you will give me a phonetical pronunciation, I will totally get it right. Ravage, okay. Revigi? He's one of the founders of The Intercept, and like, a founder, not the... Okay, fair enough. He's one of the founders of The Intercept. He left a few years ago because they got upset. He got upset about them wanting to fact check his shit. Like, hey, we don't think this is right. Like the editor. Yeah, I'm from the U.S. As if you can't tell by the thick Appalachian accent. The Intercept is one of the best journalistic institutions we have, and the fact that they were able to get rid of Glenn Greenwald when he started being a dick. That's where you will get reporting from Ken Klippenstein. You'll get reporting from Ryan Grimm. Some of my favorite reporters. We're even going to be reading a very telling piece from The Intercept here after the debate. I have to also make a correction to my previous coverage. I really dismissed the idea of the Disinformation Governance Board. being a tool of the Biden administration to try to censor people on social media. I really dismiss that as an out-of-pocket claim by right-wingers. We now have some fantastic reporting by The Intercept. But it's not necessarily the Biden administration. It's more what we would call the deep state, because this has been going on for fucking years. It was happening under the Trump administration. Oh, you're trying to escape Russia. Well, best of luck to you, my friend. Coming to any Western country at this moment is probably a crapshoot. Though the Americans tend to like Russians now, I believe. Like the American right wing is pretty accepting of Russians. Fair enough, Cicero. Fair enough. And retail, my God. I've barely done any retail in my life, and it was all retail photography. I worked for Olin Mills, Sears Portrait Studio, Walmart Portrait Studio. I did retail photography. It is my only experience in retail my entire life. And that one little taste of it was enough to make me go, yep, nope, not for me. The U.S. is pretty fucked up right now, but we're probably doing better than, like, the U.K. We're doing better than Israel. I think some of these governments are closer to being on the brink of collapse than some people might like to acknowledge. Liquor, wine, oh my God. Canada is a very pleasant country, though they do have a virulent right wing that is currently on the rise at the moment too. Seems to be a thing all over the globe right now. The fascism is on the rise. So we're going to take a commercial break on the Twitch. If you're not subscribed, you'll see Twitch's commercials. That we're going to get them all out of the way, so you won't see any commercials during the debate. That's what I try to do. If you are subscribed, you'll see my stupid little commercials. They're fun. You still get some content. After we finish the debate, New Hampshire Senate debate between Democratic incumbent Maggie Hassan taking on Republican nominee Doug Bolduc, who has been endorsed by Trump and is a nut job. Earlier this week, or maybe it was last week, we did the story about him thinking that they are putting litter boxes in schools so kids can shit and piss in litter boxes, which is totally not true. We're going to be watching that debate in about 7 minutes. On the other side of the debate, we're going to hear from a woman who was in the Seoul stampede that happened over the weekend. It was a Halloween celebration in Seoul, South Korea. She is going to give us a first-hand account. We're going to talk about the Parkland gunman. Apparently, one of the family members of a victim said that he was trying to hide his face and he took off his mask, and it was a really tense moment. So we're gonna take a look at that. Bo Burnham had a fantastic video go viral. I haven't watched it yet, but I saw a bit of the transcript. I'm like, fuck yeah, he's laying it down. Gonna play that. Gonna see Tim Ryan get cheered on Fox News. Herschel Walker is gonna compare his resume with Barack Obama's. Looks like Bibi Netanyahu is back in Israel. Bolsonaro, Jair Bolsonaro, who recently lost an election in Brazil and had went into hiding, has apparently come out of hiding and has not conceded yet. Plus, if we have time, we might listen to Rush Limbaugh's wife on with Glenn Beck. I've been saving that for when we had a little more time to be able to watch it. So the Twitch, hit the ads. You guys are get those out of the way. When we come back from the other side of the break, we're going to have the New Hampshire Senate debate.
This is WWE superstar and multiple-time champion Seth Rollins. Seth is one of the top wrestlers in the industry, and never in a million years would I expect that Seth would be spying on me, or at least following me on social media. You see, a few years ago, around 2015 or 2016, Seth started referring to himself as
Seth freaking Rollins.
Now, Justin, you may say, your name is Justin Freakin. That's not very similar. And you'd be right. But I actually rebranded myself as Justin Freakin after Rollins blatantly stole my gimmick. Before last year, I went by
Justin Freakin Mullins. Justin Freakin Mullins.
Justin Freakin Mullins.
I am on film and audio, calling myself Justin Freakin Mullins several years before Seth Rollins. And if we take a trip in the Wayback Machine, we can see that I've actually been using the appellative since I was in high school. If this was Seth's only offense, I might let it slide. But recently he started referring to himself as
The Monday Night Messiah.
I wonder where I have heard something like that before.
I am the new media messiah.
I am the new media messiah.
Self-proclaimed new media messiah.
The new media messiah.
So, Seth, since you and the WWE are clearly paying attention to me, consider this video your cease and desist to stop infringing on my intellectual property, and issue me a check for a cut